Hi Aquarius, welcome to your May 2020 Astro Update. It's Rena here. So this is a month where you have the Sun in your fourth house of home and family in Taurus until the 20th. So there could be some domestic issues that are really coming to the forefront for you, and you are involved with them, whether this is some sort of project with your home or perhaps you're even looking at real estate. Maybe something to do with your mother, something to do with anything related to your family of origin. And at the same time, Mercury is also in Taurus until the 11th. So it is also an area where you could be even something with a contract, with Mercury there, with real estate, or talking to your mother more than you normally do for whatever reason, because it's emphasized for some particular reason. On the 7th, there's a full moon at 18 degrees of Scorpio, and for probably a little bit over half of you, probably the people who have Aquarius, the first two decanates are 10-degree marks, so up until about 18 degrees of Aquarius, but this is going to vary depending on your chart. I'm just trying to give a little bit of difference for where this full moon will land. This will be your 10th house of career. Now, some of you may be kind of on a little bit of a hiatus with your career. Some people may be working from home. And I'm wondering, based upon your particular transits, whether some of you are going to actually go back to work mid-month if you have been off, or if you have been working from home. Because, and that might be why the Sun is in the fourth house for you, where you're really focused on the home. You're doing everything from home. But for some of you, this full moon can be recognition that you receive for the work that you've done, and even a promotion. For some people, because, I'm just kind of tying it into events that have happened recently, you may come to the realization that you want to do something different. This could be an ending for you. Something could definitely come into your awareness that has to do with your career. And so this is I hope I can get these recordings out before this full moon on the 7th. They're super late. I've had some tech issues. But anyway, that's going to be happening on the 7th. And also, there could be something with your father. So I was just talking about the fourth house with the mother. The 10th house could be the father. And so family matters might come up at this time. And on the 11th, Mercury goes into Gemini, which is a fellow air sign, and it's in the 5th house. And there's also a Venus retrograde a couple of days later in this house. So that's kind of interesting. Could there be an old love coming back into your life? That's a possibility with anyone when there's a Venus retrograde. But this is kind of heightened because this is in your 5th house, and the 5th house is the house of romance. And also, if you're a writer, with Mercury and Venus in the 5th house, if Venus is retrograding, you may be going over an old script, an old novel that you have wanted to, because 5th house can be your creative output, and perhaps you're digging it up. You think that it has a life after all, if you've been kind of not, you just kind of abandoned a project, if you will, that has a literary connotation. And picking that up again, this can also be talking with Mercury in the 5th to somebody that you're interested in. And Yeah, so something along those lines. And let me think, something else. Yeah, yeah, that's about it for what I can think of at the moment. But then on the same day, the 11th, Saturn goes retrograde at 1 degree of Aquarius. So Saturn has recently entered your sign. And, I don't want to emphasize the Saturn in Aquarius influence in 2020 because I really do believe that the Capricorn influence is much more prevalent. In July, Saturn will, since it's in its retrograde pattern right now, it's going to go back into Capricorn. And it will stay in Capricorn even when Saturn goes direct in late September. It will still be in Capricorn until December. So I'm kind of washing my hands of Saturn and Aquarius for now. But, technically it's in your sign. If you're born at, like on January 20th, 21st, 22nd, it's right on top of your sun, or you have it as your rising sign, it's right there. And so it's going to be particularly influential for those people. But for the vast majority of you, it's, going to be felt in the 12th house because, it's only at 1 degree. So what I can say about this is that in 2021, this will be much more a factor for you. I've already done videos about Saturn in Aquarius, and it's kind of funny that I actually did them, given the fact that it's not going to go very far in 2020. I think I did them before I realized that. And so if you're interested in how it will affect you as an Aquarius sun or Aquarius rising, you can always check out my playlist for that particular series. But in general, what I would say is that, I think this is about working on yourself. And even when it goes back into the 12th house, into Capricorn, and, for the vast majority of you, it is going to be in the 12th house, even, when it's at 1 degree of Aquarius. But, what I will just say in general is that, having all this kind of these intense transits in the 12th house may have been quite life-changing for some Aquarians over the last, even going back as far as a dozen years ago when Pluto entered this house. So you've had Saturn there, you've had Pluto still there until 2023. You've had and then Pluto's going to go into your sign. Oh boy, that'll be fun, right? But it will be very, create even more transformation in the first house. But the 12th house, I don't know. Something popped into my mind when I was just saying about the 12th house, like the house where ghosts reside. And I wonder if I'm just remembering a line in a book or something I saw on the internet about the 12th house. But definitely your karmic past, the 12th house, and Saturn is a karmic planet. And when you're talking about retrograde, you're talking about revisiting these things. And with Saturn in the 12th, because this is where it's going to be for all intents and purposes for everybody, except for that person who has it at, who's born on January 21st or whatever, maybe you or whoever's at 1 degree. But for the vast majority of you, it's actually going to be in that 12th house, even this Aquarius retrograde of Saturn. And so if you have felt in the last few years, Aquarius, that either you've been trying to get some kind of a spiritual discipline going in order to improve your life on a different level. And something along those lines, it's hard to kind of pin it down, but something that is not necessarily a regimen that is related to practical living. Okay, that's the only way I can really put it, because in these times that we have where we're looking to the world and we're seeing that, so much that we can't control, there are things that we can control, but that we feel helpless even within ourselves. And I think a lot of that has to do with karmic influence. In other words, just like you have, from your childhood, you might have some patterns that are not very conducive to good things happening. I don't know how else to put it, but that you feel like this is just how it is. This is what you feel compelled to do for whatever reason. Then it's so hard to eradicate just from our childhood, let alone stuff that we've carried over from other lifetimes that have, things that have not been worked on. And the work is the Saturn, but it's not something like tangible. It's not something that, like, if you're working on your house or you're working on your car. So that's what makes it frustrating, because it's really more about tuning into the higher dimensions. So it's really about meditation, which can be the 12th house. It's really about self-inquiry, which is more of a conscious practice, which you are sitting with yourself and you're questioning your feelings, your thoughts. You're questioning these things, trying to get to the root of the issue, and you're not distracting yourself with other things. So that's the best way I can put it. And just having, and just making those connections of the things that need to be addressed. The 12th house can be addictions. And, it's so funny because I'm always still reading about different aspects of astrology and still trying to gain as much knowledge as possible. And sometimes I see, the 5th house is addictions, the 8th house is addictions. And to me, the 12th house was always the house of addictions because it's ruled by Neptune, and Neptune is an escapist. So that makes the most sense for me in terms of, I think the 5th house could be indulgence and that leading to addiction. The 8th house, obsession with something, and that's a form of addiction. But the 12th house to me is that self-undoing, that tendency to self-destruct. And the person doing so because they don't want to face certain things going on. That's what escapism is. So yeah, I see it in that particular sense. And so looking at these things, seeing how they connect to your life, maybe something has to be dealt with. Maybe you did get a handle on an addiction, and it you kind of lost the momentum, and you have to, discipline yourself, spiritually discipline yourself. Addictions are, they talk about it being a disease, but I would say, I don't like the word disease. I prefer disorder. I would say it's a spiritual disorder at the end of the day. And so the 12th house is where you get that straight, with Saturn. On the 13th, Mars goes into Pisces, second house of earned income. So this is another reason why I was thinking, since this is almost mid-month, that you might be going back to work, maybe, if you were working only part-time, working full-time, maybe even working overtime with Mars, where it's very active in this house that represents the money that you earn. There's definitely a desire to make money. Maybe you're trying to make up for lost time. I don't know. On the same day, Venus goes retrograde in the 5th. I've already talked about that. The very next day, we have Jupiter retrograding. So we have these, 3 planets retrograding in May. On the 14th at 27 degrees of Capricorn in the 12th house. Now, this is an opportunity for you to perhaps take advantage of something that has a spiritual nature to it, that either a teacher, a spiritual program, something along those lines, definitely reflection on your spiritual journey. This can even be, maybe this is even some sort of even money. I don't know how that would really connect to the 12th house unless you yourself had some kind of plan to work for some spiritual outfit. So, sometimes when there's a transit of Jupiter in the 12th house, they say you can receive money from past life, good karma or something. So, the retrograde can, talk about past lives, that's really on steroids. So who knows? The point is that sometimes Jupiter retrograde can actually be still beneficial and speak about picking up on things that you weren't able to take advantage of when the transit was direct. On the 22nd, we have a new moon at 2 degrees of Gemini, so that's in the 5th house. So there might be some kind of a new relationship brewing, even if it's somebody that you used to date and you have hooked up with them again. It might be that you feel this sense of things have changed and that you're not as, that both of you are looking at the relationship in a certain way that maybe you didn't before. And so anyway, that's really good for people that are looking for love, because you have these transits in the 5th house. So in any case, Aquarius, I hope that you enjoyed this. I hope I can get this out. It's already almost a week late. And thanks for listening. Take care. Bye.